finally week one. It's Monday, September 7th. Maybe you'll listen to this on Tuesday. It's PFF Forecast. We're just a few days away from football, which means...
You know what else it is?
What's that?
It's leg day.
If you're watching on YouTube, sky's out, thighs out. And we have all of the week one games. We're going to go through them mostly from a spread perspective, but we got a few nuggets in there as well. And we have Lee Sharpe joining us to go over every single one of those. So that's a ton of fun. And at the end of the podcast, I'm going to finally tell Eric, he's never heard this story before, my airplane story from a couple of weeks ago. So let's rock. All right, week one. Did you think?
I think I've grown this beard out in the intention of shaving it if we ever got week one. I feel like,
how good does it feel?
Dude, it's honestly like we always joke, and obviously there are various levels of like caring about certain football. Like I watched every XFL game.
Yeah.
You know, college football this weekend. The level of normalcy that just getting to watch a college football game, like it gave rise to, was something I'm, excited about. So
I went to bed last night feeling like it was Christmas Eve. I woke up jacked and
like swole.
I was just pumped, man. Here was the best feeling. I went. It's Labor Day. I didn't think of it as a holiday. I was just excited. Went for my 6 a.m. workout, and this is the best feeling. The gym was pitch black because no one had been in there, and I just felt.
This is how degenerate I am, by the way. So last night, Sunday before Labor Day, I found a bunch of work-related things. Put about like 17 things about like I'm going to talk to this person about this. I'm going to talk to this person about that. Yeah. It's like I wake up and it's like it's Labor Day. They're all off.
They're
it's
all
like,
off.
Jeez.
With that being said, it's time to talk about week one. So we've got Lee Sharpe. Here he is. All right, it's finally week one. And we figured it made sense to have someone join us to break it down because it's that exciting of an event. And the perfect person to do that with is Lee Sharpe, who we're really excited, is going to be a part of our team this year. He's going to be a part of the PFF betting podcast, daily betting podcast, which is going to be exciting as well. And he's going to be writing some great content. If you don't follow him on Twitter at Lee Sharpe NFL, I think I got that right. You should, because he's got a ton of insights. Lee, brother, how is everything on the West Coast, man?
West Coast is, pretty nice, all things considered, given the state of the world. It's nice weather we're having. And,
thank you. Rub it in, please. Humidity here great. Is
it's not great.
Not great. You're in Washington, and I wanted to start off. We do a couple icebreakers always to start. You're not from Washington. Have you adopted the Seattle Seahawks as your team?
No. Chicago Bears for some dumb reason, but yeah.
Which one's harder to root for?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that the Seahawks might actually be harder to root for because that you can be great given the position you're in and you're just not because of bad decisions. While like the Bears, I don't know what their path is forward at all.
It's really a tough one, right? Because with them, the hope, like the best thing that people can get from a team is hope. The Bears, when they traded Mac, and then when you found out that Trubisky sucked.
Sorry, wait, we found that out?
Oh yeah, sorry. But I would say, right, your heart probably sank, Lee, if you didn't before that week one game against Green Bay about a year ago. At some point when you found out, God, like we gave the farm up for a defensive end who's really good, but our quarterback can't be replaced, and literally can't. I mean, they went out of their way to try to replace him and frankly couldn't.
It's unkillable.
Yeah, it sucked, and I knew that Trubisky was bad, after 2018. I was hopeful maybe 2017 was, rookie year, not that great. He's under John Fox, not, the finest NFL coach. And, hey, maybe Nagy can find something good and turn him around. But even though the Bears had a really good record in 2018, it wasn't because of Trubisky. And, they stuck with him in 2019 anyway. And I was like, well, okay. At least now they know after the 2019 campaign that he's not good enough.
No.
Oh, then they got me again.
What about this? Here's a little silver lining for you. Because as Eric knows, I am a ray of sunshine, ever the optimist. And this is the silver lining. Ryan Pace has realized that the only way to get Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence is to play Trubisky for the entire season.
If we end up after this year with Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, I'll be thrilled. I'll be thrilled. That's the optimal outcome.
Yeah, I think, man, it's so tough, right? Because I mean, there are other teams that are going to be staring this down the barrel. I wrote in an article this week about the Buffalo Bills where I said, probably the best thing to happen to them is for Josh Allen to not be good, because they have so much runway now with Bean and with McDermott that they can regroup and get this thing together relatively quickly. For the Bears, it's just simply not there right now. They don't have young players. I mean, they got Jalen Johnson in the draft. They got Cole Kmet, but it's like, where there's not this crop of young players where I look at that same division in Minnesota.
Miller's exciting.
Minnesota's going to suck this year, in my opinion, but at least they got 9 draft picks that made, or 9 to 11 or whatever it was, that made out of the 15. There's some optimism there. It's just simply not there for Chicago. And I think also Green Bay when everybody realizes that Jordan Love can't beat out Tim Boyle.
All right, this was an unplanned diversion into Chicago Bears. And the good thing about that is we've maxed out all our time on the Chicago Bears for the rest of the year. So we don't have to talk about them going forward. That's fantastic. I have some icebreakers for you, Lee, because I like to try and get to know people a little bit better. And I'll start week 1 off with this one. Your drink of choice is what?
Pinot Noir wine generally. I like it's kind of a very sort of richer wine that I like, and I don't know, wine is a nice balance for me between, hey, like I'm feeling a little buzz, it's feeling good, but I'm not gonna drink, right, where I'm gonna have a hangover or something if I drink too much.
You and Eric are then similarly dispositioned because he's all about the wine.
I've moved into bourbon a little bit.
That's what a pandemic will do to you.
But yeah, that's almost all pandemic induced.
So you're a Pinot Noir guy. What are you?
Merlot, but I could do Pinot.
Okay.
It's
you could hack
the
it.
redder the better.
There you go.
Yeah, like there's several good wines. I just happen to be partial to Pinots.
All right. Next question. You have to eat one meal for the rest of your life. What is it?
I don't know that it's my favorite meal, but if I'm confined to one thing, it's probably pizza, because I don't know if there's a point, like if there's any food to me where I don't know if too much of it will just drive me insane, it's probably pizza.
Okay, what if
pizza's obviously good.
What if I confine you to one type of pizza though?
That's fine. I'll just pepperoni. Okay. I can eat that forever. I think
it's the right choice. Do you put, if someone said, can I put hot honey on your pepperoni pizza? What would your response be?
Why would you want to do that?
Good.
Yeah. It's sort of like when it's sort of like in blackjack when you have, you have 2 10s and you want to split them, but then the dealer's like, why would you take one thing that's good and try to shoot the moon when it's already good? Like to me, like that's what taking something as good as pepperoni pizza and trying to
add to it.
Add something bad to it.
That's the correct take. And some people want to fight me over this, but I remain steadfast. That was a good answer.
All opinions are held, I suppose.
Yeah. All right. Week 1, I have chopped it up. We have chopped it up into 3 slates. The good games, the games, and then the Skyline Chili slate, which I actually think I'll probably bet most of those games. But the first game up is Houston at Kansas City. Kansas City minus 9.5. Believe it opened, was it 10.5? Was it 10 for a while?
It was 11 at one point.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Lee, I'll let you kick this one off and give us your thoughts on the Texans and the Chiefs.
I bet the Texans plus 10 when it was at 10. I obviously don't like it as much now when it's, now it's like 9.5, depending on where you look. But I tend to, I think that 10 is just a lot of points, especially in times when we're, uncertain about how the effects of training camp and things like that. And I just think that it's just too many points for a team that is also good.
I really like, I think I got 10.5 when it was there, and I'm in agreement with you. I think 9 is a decent price in today's NFL. Like 9.5 is okay, but obviously you want to cross through that key number. But one of the things I noticed thinking about home field advantage currently, Chiefs are not going to have that many people there. The crowd noise is capped off at like 40 decibels, which is nothing for a Kansas City Chiefs game. You go back to January of 2020, and the Chiefs were 10-point favorites at home in the playoffs against Houston. And I think,
a banged up Houston team.
A banged up Houston team and a Kansas City team coming off of a bye and with a full home field advantage. I don't think that people are and then the other thing, and Lee, you can speak to this as well as anybody, power ratings diverge as the season progresses, right? Like the difference between the Chiefs now,
why you regress at the end of the season.
Chiefs now versus the difference between the Chiefs and the Texans now, even if perceptions are the same in week 1 of the following season, are going to be smaller from a point spread perspective. So I don't know we regress to the market, obviously, just to make sure that we're not saying, hey, this game has an 8% edge or something. But I would say the true number is far closer to something like 8 or 9. Don't you, Lee?
Yeah, no, I definitely think that the line's overpriced for the Texans. I definitely think that the line is not where it should be, and that Houston's in a better position. I don't know why the market is so sold on full home field advantage, because when you look at what the spreads, especially deep down, and sort of try to get the market implied power ratings for every team, it really just looks like they're valuing home field advantage at like 2.5, which is pretty typical. And I just don't think that matches reality. Maybe it does for teams like the Chiefs that have at least partial fans. Like maybe you'll still get a lot of that effect there. But for most of these teams, it doesn't make sense to me. And I think the regression point is accurate as well. Yeah.
Well, and home field advantage is so weird too, because Kansas City, I feel like, has an overinflated one because of the way that their schedule shakes out, which they often get to play 3 West Coast teams in noon Central Time so like if you go back and look and you don't adjust for those things, then Kansas City has a better than average home field advantage. But right here, none of those things are intact. The only thing is that you get the extra sort of like, if motivation or emotion are a thing, that's it. But I don't get it.
There are 2 big things that I think about make me feel good about the Texans here, and then I have one thing that makes me feel really bad. But I'll start with the Texans, which is, you guys mentioned the home field and the motivation. The last time the Texans were in Kansas City, it was humiliating. And the Chiefs then go on, win the Super Bowl. If there's any trepidation with the Chiefs, it's got to be, man, like, you guys just overcame these massive deficits. You feel like you can do anything. So how does that manifest itself? Well, it could certainly manifest itself with a little bit of lackadaisicalness. Now, you wouldn't expect that out of Mahomes and Andy Reid, but there are other people on these teams that play football, and I would think that maybe it sneaks in a little bit. The second thing with regard to Houston is, to me, there is this rose-colored glasses for the Chiefs, and rightfully so, because of Mahomes and Andy Reid. And then on the flip side, for Houston, it's like, oh, Bill O'Brien is a bad GM, therefore everything he does must suck. The Texans must be terrible because they got rid of DeAndre Hopkins. And I actually, Bill O'Brien, to me, as a head coach, is probably underrated for that reason. And so those are the 2 things that I think are working towards the Texans. My worry would be the Texans couldn't cover us 3.
Yeah, well, here's another bias, and I was talking to you about this, George, this weekend. Another thing about the favorite bias is how exhilarating it was if you back the Chiefs last time they played.
Yeah,
to have, not only when you back a favorite, you're losing to start the game, and a bunch of things have to happen for you to win the bet. And bettors, not guys like you, Lee, or George, but like the average square bettor who probably does have a say in this week's game and the Super Bowl, given the amount of time leading up. The fact is the Chiefs overcame not only a 24-point deficit, but also the 10-point spread in that game. And it was exhilarating, right? What folks don't like to do is to bet the Texans and have that win right, at the beginning of the game, stolen from you by Patrick Mahomes.
Crushed.
And I think that that's like what's kind of built into here. Favorite bias is a little bit overblown, but I think in this particular case, it might be rearing its head.
Yeah.
People remembering the playoff game and just kind of going, oh, I don't want that to happen again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what the Texans should be thinking. They also get J.J. Watt. I think we're underrating that wide receiving core. So I'm with you guys on the Texans. Does anyone feel particularly a certain way about the total, which I think right now is 54.5?
Lee, let me ask you this question. Are you heavy on any totals until you see some games played this year?
I'm really not. Like, it is very, I had talked with a buddy of mine who I do the super contest with about like, do we think that betting all the unders makes sense or something, and maybe the offenses are a little bit more disorganized, and maybe that's not something that matters as much for defense. But I just don't think we know what not having a normal offseason and a normal preseason will do to teams. Does it help offense? Does it help defense? I just don't think we know.
Yeah, and like a lot of people hypothesize that the NBA bubble unders would hit, and if you blindly bet those for the until the playoffs started, you would have been buried, I think. So we really don't know, and I think for that reason, I mean, we're certainly, I think, have more opinions on sides than totals.
I agree wholeheartedly. The one interesting thing about the bubble was, do you remember the prevailing reasoning for that? Why people wanted to bet the unders?
Well, I thought it was because the pace wasn't. Well, no, the pace was actually okay in the exhibition games. It was simply just a bias.
Yeah. What was interesting in hearing some people talk about it was that apparently the shooter's eye is so great there because they don't have that deep.
It's the opposite of playing in a dome during March Madness.
Exactly.
Yeah. No,
exactly.
It's great. I mean, but they didn't foresee that.
Right.
So there might be. So somebody asked me, I think it was Adam Chernoff, who I think we all know is a professional bettor online. He asked me the question during the Periscope about defenses missing tackles and stuff like that. And I do think there's one side of the offenses being inefficient, but the other side of like there might be a lot of just like long touchdowns that kill unders, right? So like I could make an argument for either side of whether to bet unders or overs, especially during this time.
If I had to lean one way, I would lean towards defenses being overly simplified and being a little flat-footed. And particularly in a game like this, where the continuity on the offensive side of the ball is, and the Texans are playing defense, I would lean towards points.
If that is coupled with poor play in the red zone by offenses who are not gelled, like it could be just a lot of freaking field goals. Like that's like the whole funny thing about this whole thing. I don't know.
That's what we need.
Long drives with field goals.
Could you imagine? We've been waiting all this time, and first half it's like 4 field goals to 3.
Yeah. Right.
God, please no. Okay, next game.
Hopefully that doesn't sound too likely.
No, I don't think so. Bill O'Brien, my guy, will go for it at least one of those. Green Bay, Minnesota. Green Bay's at Minnesota. This line has moved a little bit. It's now Minnesota by 2.5. What are the thoughts here? I'll start with you, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, this is a legitimate move, right? Early in the offseason, I think May 8th, it was Green Bay plus 3.5 was minus 115. Now it's 2.5, and wow, plus 125 or so on the money line. I would say if I'm looking at this game, I think Green Bay is the only way you can go. And if you're going to bet Green Bay now, it's got to probably be a part of a teaser leg, which gets you across 3, 7, 6, and 8, or money line. I think betting 2.5 is sort of like not the most worthwhile thing at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you wholeheartedly. Lee, do you find yourself betting a lot of teasers? I'm just curious.
I'm not much of a teaser person. Like to me, it's often when you look at the sort of the juice or whatever, then I don't, that you're taking out, I don't know that it makes as much sense. And also, like, I tend to like to essentially have spread out bets rather than sort of concentrate multiple games into one bet, because that tends to, I think, sort of reduce the variance of betting by having a spread of outcomes.
I was so excited, so excited when this was 3.5. I think Eric was probably more so excited. And this is kind of an indictment on the way that we feel about the Minnesota Vikings this entire season, which is that we kind of think they're going to suck.
Well, and it's also the market wising up to what Lee talked about earlier, which is home field. I mean, like,
Sure.
The Vikings since 2016 have been worth, after you adjust for everything, about a point more to the point spread, not the actual like bookmakers / bettors that shape the lines are putting an extra point on the Minnesota Vikings home field advantage. Like having that at 3.5, essentially you're saying the Vikings and the Packers are the same team on a neutral field. But home field advantage for Minnesota is so big that we got to give that an extra half a point. I think now people are starting to say, well, that doesn't have any face validity at all. So you chop it down. I don't think anything fundamentally has changed from Minnesota to Green Bay. In fact, Minnesota just acquired a pass rusher in a trade, and this number is still traveling down a point. I think it's 100% what Lee was talking about, which is they just priced in home field advantage way too high, and now they're reeling a little bit.
You don't think part of it, though, is just recognizing that the Vikings lost Stephon Diggs, that Kirk Cousins has no one that likes him in the locker room?
But all that was true on May 8th.
I get that. Yeah. I'm not saying that it wasn't. I'm saying that people go, oh yeah, I didn't think about this originally.
Yeah.
I don't know. Lee, what's your thought on the Vikings?
Yeah, I know. I do think that their offseason does not bode well for their future. I do think too that the initial price may have been somewhat kind of similar to your point about people not liking the Texans with the DeAndre Hopkins trade. People not liking the Packers draft. They didn't get any help for Rodgers at receiver or whatever, and people kind of going, oh, the Packers actually kind of suck. And while they're certainly not the 13-win team, to allude back to a previous PFF forecast.
Don't know who said that.
Even once you adjust for that, right? Like and treat them as a 9 to 10 win team. I don't, they're not that much worse than they were, the Packers. While I think the Vikings are more likely to move down.
Yeah, motivated Rodgers. Totals at 46. I think we've established that we're laying off this one. So next up, this is a game that I'm very excited for. The Arizona Cardinals going to San Francisco. The 49ers are a 7-point favorite. Total is at 47.5. Cardinals played San Francisco tough a couple of times last year. We talked to Vance Joseph at the Combine, Eric. I would describe him as being confident, to say the least, in terms of what this team could be, especially on the defensive side of the ball this year. So 7, Deebo Samuel supposed to be trying to play. Lee, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, 7 is a number, and obviously where you don't have to worry about the being on the wrong side of the half. I think I kind of like the Cardinals in this one, though I think it's a closer game in terms to bet. The 7 is obviously a lot of points. The sort of mispriced home field advantage, I think, favors the Cardinals. I think the market and bettors generally are probably underestimating the amount of regression from the 49ers. And while, the Cardinals are a team, I think that is tougher to accurately assess, but probably has moved a step forward since where they were last season.
I love the Cardinals getting 7 points here. I've said this before. I'm going to continue to say it. The 49ers worry me a little bit. And I'm not saying that I'm terrified they're going to lose this game, but I have a hard time seeing them stamp out the Arizona Cardinals, a team that to me has improved as much as any team out there. Weren't that bad last year from a lot of fundamental perspectives, and yet didn't have a single wide receiver that was getting open anytime, anywhere down the field. So like Kyler Murray all of a sudden has a guy that gets open all the time. To me, this is one of my favorite ones.
Yeah. One of the things that we've always said about Seattle when we've liked them in the past is they have superstar caliber players at every level of the field. Now, Arizona doesn't, but you can make a case that they have good enough players at every level. So their defense was terrible last year. Horrible, garbage. But you look at Chandler Jones, right? You look at Isaiah Simmons. Jordan Hicks was a really good linebacker for the Philadelphia Eagles before he moved over and kind of wasn't great last year. You have Budda Baker and Patrick Peterson. Like, there's obviously a lot of holes there to fill in, but there's something to work with in Arizona. The issue that I have, and I like this game too. I like Arizona here too. The issue that I have with this game is I'm not entirely sold on Kyler Murray yet.
Can you expound? Because I think this is an interesting conversation.
Yeah. So I mean, Murray was last season. If you look at positively graded plays, negatively graded plays splits, he was kind of in that like range where the Mahomes is in the world, the good quarterbacks of the world are in that 25 to 30 range. Murray was at like 15, right? So like he wasn't producing plus plays as a quarterback very often. He was limiting turnover where he plays somewhat, although he took a lot of sacks. So like I need to see him produce a ton of positively graded plays, or at least show the potential to. We know it's not as sticky as avoiding negatives, which he was better at last year than a lot of players. But I just need to see that a little bit.
Real quick, you say this all the time. Positively graded plays are not sticky because it relies on the offense to make them possible. To me, that's a Cliff Kingsbury stat. They need to find ways to give Kyler Murray throws to make. The question as to whether he can make them, to me, is not one that I have. I mean, obviously, you're concerned because he graded, was it 35th out of 36 in PFF grade from a clean pocket, which is bad. But you go watch those games and you go like, well, I don't know where this guy would have thrown the ball.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. The question is always,
it's like the Tom Brady thing.
The counterfactual is always an issue, right? Like the counterfactual being like, we've only seen Sam Darnold with completely horrible situations. Yep. Like if we give him good situations, that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be good. It just means that his situations will be changed.
Here's one last thing on this that I think is interesting. I was talking to Seth Galina about Russell Wilson. And he was talking about how he had heard this quote from Russell Wilson, how he doesn't like to throw over the middle of the field, honestly, because he can't see it that well. And we were looking at some of Timo's, heat maps. And yeah, it's very true. Like Russell Wilson does not go over the middle of the field. He throws outside the numbers more than just about anyone else. How much does it hurt a guy like Kyler Murray, who probably wants to go outside the numbers a bunch, to not have anyone that can, like, it disproportionately hurts him to not have a receiver that can get open outside the numbers?
It certainly does, but now he has Hopkins, which
That's
will really help him.
Okay, we've rambled enough. Lee, help us. Take me off the Cardinals bandwagon.
Take you off the Cardinals bandwagon?
Yes. You can.
I mean, if we're trying to make the case, right? I mean, for San Francisco, clearly they have had they have done a good job of building a team. I think Kyle Shanahan is one of the best coaches in the NFL, and he's clearly found a way to get good use out of Jimmy Garoppolo, who had average quarterback play, can make that team succeed. But I'm somewhat devil's advocating here. I do think Arizona is probably the right side, even though I think you guys are higher on this game in terms of how much you like it than me.
I mean, the Jimmy G thing is interesting. I could see, I think there's a real chance for him to be awesome this year, but for that to be the case because the Niners need to score more points. The defense regresses a little bit. I think if the defense regresses a little bit, the run game being average will be exacerbated, and you won't see these monster rushing totals that, make people excited about running the football. And Jimmy G has to throw it a little bit more. And you would worry that he just comes out and, starts dealing right away, because he doesn't. Last year he came in and there was, he's overcoming an injury. The year before, he gets injured, right? It's the first year after that kind of crazy run. Yeah. So he's never really had a normal start to a season.
Yeah, that's true. And remember last season how bad he was in that Denver preseason game, and everybody was ready to hunt him.
Jumping ship. Okay, next up, Tampa Bay, New Orleans. The New Orleans Saints, 3.5 point favorites at home. 49.5 is the total. Lee, we'll start with you.
This is actually kind of a really interesting game. I think it's one of the most sort of tricky ways to think about it, because I from simulations and numbers and stuff, I think the Saints are probably the right side. There's a huge amount of uncertainty to me with Brady and the Bucks. I could see that working out great, which seems to be what the vast majority of expectations are. I can also see Brady being old. He certainly did not do as well with the Patriots in 2019 as he had previously. You can blame, receiver talent and stuff like that. But, I would think of him, especially with Belichick, as somebody who can make something happen. And it's not like he was bad, but he certainly went down, regressed somewhat. The line, being, having to pay though for, being on the wrong side of three, is a little rough. Especially because I think that again, it's the home field advantage thing, right? Normally people talk about the Superdome as this incredibly loud, frustrating place to play at, right, for a visiting team. This isn't going to be that. This is going to be, nobody else there. And, so I can see the Bucks doing well with that. If you force me onto a side, I think I look at the numbers and go to the Saints, but it is to me one of the trickier lines because of the so much back and forth on the different ways to look at this game.
I, for one, am so excited that I don't have a pick on this game.
Yeah.
Because there's so much, and I think this is like a good lesson for bettors, right? And I'm bad at this, but like the last 7 games of college football, there was not a whole lot of value on these betting markets. And you could learn a lot about those teams by just watching the games, looking at the data and stuff. We know so much less about Tampa than we think we do. And this game is going to tell us, don't you guys agree that for all the teams in week 1 of this season, a game against the Saints, a top 5 team in the NFL, is going to tell us more about Tampa Bay than any of the other games are going to tell us about any other team?
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
And the fact that we don't have to take a position on it is great. And to Lee's point, 3.5 is just the woat number to lay if you like the favorite, in the sense that this game could come down to the wire and go to overtime, kick a field goal, and it's well, we were right about the team that won, but we were wrong about the cover. And it's I don't know.
Let me tell you and the listeners a little secret here. You don't have to bet every game.
Yeah, you shouldn't really. And in all honesty,
right. I was being sarcastic, but anyways, I digress. The point being, people want to bet this game because they want to be right about the Bucks from the start.
Yep.
Right? How badly do you want to go up to your friends and be yeah, of course I bet the Bucks. Yep. And they win by 20. It's this is the greatest thing we'll ever see. And there's nothing wrong with laying off it and learning, as you said, that was a great point, learning more about any other team, in large part because they're also a brand new team. And you're making a ton of projection about Brady, about that offense, about them being on the same page, so many things. And the Saints are a very legit team, right? At all levels of the defense.
Is there another way to play this game from a futures? Because we're in an interesting territory right now, Lee, because we're also in a situation where all these futures markets have been sitting here for a long time. And interestingly, at least from the numbers we have, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' current money line of 160 is the exact same as their FanDuel price to win the NFC South. Really? So it's kind of funny. But I would say the place to maybe play this, because if you want to bet New Orleans, you got to lay 170, 180. The place to play New Orleans, if you like them in this week, is minus 115 to win the NFC South.
Right.
Because we talk about our Falcons all the time, but they're kind of a non-factor. Carolina's
you stop it.
Carolina's even further away from that. But you're getting a good. If New Orleans wins this game, they're kind of in a driver's seat, certainly.
Oh yeah.
And if they win the game, what are the set of outcomes where Tampa Bay is there's still a lot of outcomes where Tampa Bay is still a threat to them, but there are also situations where Tampa Bay is shown to be a goner by this time next week.
Right.
Yeah, no, if you know, obviously you guys, you know, do a bunch of simulations, but you know, for the listener who may not, you know, when you lock in a result like this of like the top two teams, you know, in the division, and you sort of lock one of those results in week one, it shifts pretty significantly the outcomes for the rest of the season, because not only are you just a game ahead in the standings, but also the tiebreaker is super relevant. You know, if it comes down to the same record, you know, and New Orleans happens to win both of the games against Tampa, then obviously they win the division. And so because of that, there is you know, good, you know, thinking ahead. Another way to sort of play it is you know, after the game, when you know the results, see if the division prices have adjusted sufficiently.
Yeah, that's always, and I think what's going to be interesting about this year, as you know, as somebody that does modeling, I would say that the chances that a lot of these, you know, yes, no playoff props are properly priced is lower this year than most years because of the 7-team playoff. I think it's going to take a while for those to get as efficient as they need to be.
Yeah, especially when the Saints are playing with Jameis Winston from week 12 on. That's going to change things up a lot as well.
That game, I'm so excited that game's at 4:25. I'm so excited I'm looking forward to watching this game just from a curiosity's sake.
The next game up is the Sunday nighter. That's Dallas at Los Angeles, the Rams. And the Rams are a 3-point underdog. We have come a long way. It's been a long road for these Rams. And man, I remember us back in the old studio talking about how Sean McVay could walk on water. Now that may not exactly be the thought process there. Eric, you are fading the Rams in every state that it's legal to bet in.
Correct.
So your thoughts?
I think 3 is too many to lay with Dallas on the road in the first game of the new stadium. I don't like the Rams in general, but this number has gotten a little out of control.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's one of those, I don't think I will bet this game, but if I had to, you know, and someone was like, hey man, it's Sunday night, let's place a bet on this game. You're at home, you, for whatever it's worth, have some continuity, you know. Robert Woods is good.
Yeah.
You have some tight ends that you can work with. And the Dallas defense, I'm not sold on yet.
I'd be interested to see the prop prices for a lot of these offensive players for the Rams. The continuity is almost entirely on one side of the ball, though, right? Because the Rams defense is losing a lot of people, plus Wade Phillips. The thing that Dallas is trying to overcome is 2 lost starters on the offensive line. So, you know, if Aaron Donald is worth what everybody says he is, he could disrupt this game in a meaningful way.
So that was what I was going to talk about. Lyle Collins is out.
Yeah.
Lee, does that do, you know, we talk a lot about does one player really swing anything that much, but they are really thin on that offensive line. What are your thoughts on this one?
Cluster injuries, I do think can matter, right? Cluster sort of meaning, you know, multiple players in the same position group. But, you know, again, like to me, that moves the line maybe a point or two. And, you know, it's hard to obviously not all points are equal, and swinging around to 3 is always challenging. I you know, that doesn't sort of make me want to reevaluate this game. The point Eric was making earlier, kind of like wanting to, you know, hoping to fade LA, but not this being the right spot, you know, that also kind of struck out as me, right? Is, you know, I think the Dallas sort of hype machine is out of control.
Yes.
And when you see, you know, when you have 2 teams that you think the market may be overvaluing and they just happen to play each other, you know, as a bettor, you're just kind of going, well, the schedule was not a friend to me. And that's the breaks.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
Yeah, and you just use that time to, you know, to try to figure out about them. You know, to your point, Lee, we found, and this was due to a meeting with a prominent coach that that the cluster injuries or cluster changes along the offensive lines are significant, right? And it's something that you do that is, to your point, like both offensive linemen can be worth 0 points to the point spread, but add to each other to be a half a point or you know, a point. And the secondary is still is similar, although it's harder to model because it's harder to model who actually starts in the secondary.
Right. What does it mean to have everyone in there?
Yeah. But offensive line is a far more tractable problem, and there is something there. It's funny that offensive line play is less necessarily about the strength of the players and more about how long they've played together.
I'd be interested to see with Aaron Donald, because they don't have a ton of other defensive linemen that are any good.
Yep.
They've taken Aaron Donald and put him on the outside more and more and more. And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe it's a 50-50 split on the edge and on the interior, just putting him up against the weakest guy they can find and letting him try and go get Dak Prescott. Next up, the Monday night games, Pittsburgh and the New York Giants. We have to include the Monday nighters because they're prime time, and we've got
for some reason.
Yeah, for some reason. So Pittsburgh at the Giants. Giants are 6-point underdogs at home. Eric,
this number has moved a ways, right? I mean, I think it opened at a field goal, maybe. Now all the way, it was 4.5, just like last week. I think.
Do you think Joe Judge just beat it into submission?
Yeah, it's too many points to lay when you're looking at Pittsburgh. One of the reasons why is the Giants are actually a formidable bunch at the receiving core, and I think when you look at Pittsburgh played way over their skis in terms of turnovers and health in the secondary. Mm-hmm. It'll be a fun matchup to watch.
I'm so fascinated to see what Big Ben and the Steelers look like.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know, and I hesitate.
I also don't know if we'll know after this game.
I hesitate to lay almost a touchdown with that team.
Agree, Lee.
Yeah, if I'm going to bet this, I think I bet the Giants side. To me, games like this are one of the hardest to model because, obviously when you're modeling, you're kind of taking a look at how sort of the team did last year and then trying to make some adjustments for changes and regressions. But the gap in quarterback play from the Steelers, from Ben Roethlisberger, at least as we imagine Ben Roethlisberger to hopefully be this year. Hopefully he continues to be great, but versus Delvin Hodges and Mason Rudolph was a rough drop. And so when you put in the quarterback into the model and say, oh hey, no, the quarterback's good again. And then that's fighting against the really low sort of advanced metrics like EPA per play and things of how badly the Steelers did last year. I think it's a trickier game to model, even with like we were talking about before, the home field advantage being likely mispriced. Fans in with the Giants, I still think you have to take the Giants if you're taking a side, but this is probably a stay away for me.
Yeah, I'm with you. You guys basically said everything I was going to say, which means we can move on to the later one, which is way more exciting. And that's Tennessee at Denver, which is a pick. There's a snowstorm. There are fires in Denver. We hope everyone is safe and stays healthy enough to get to this game on Monday. Total is at 41. I don't want to hate on Drew Lock too much, but I do think it is a little ridiculous. Maybe not ridiculous, but I feel like he's still getting a little bit of love, a little too much love, given that he played like 5 games, threw 5 touchdowns, and had 2 interceptions.
This is one place where I will allow a total. I think Tennessee will go over this.
By themselves?
Close. Well, here's my thing. I got Tennessee plus 2.5 early in the process. So it was at May 8th, Tennessee was plus 2.5, even money. Now it's down to pick 'em. That's not all clowny. That is, I think, people reasoning through the Tannehill stuff. Tannehill, and we had arguments about it. It's a throwback, but like 2018, I was, Dolphins were 3-0, right? They, all this kind of stuff. Osweiler came in and sucked. And I'm like, well, Tannehill, like they're 7-7 with 3 games to go or 2 games to go or whatever. 7-6, I think, with 3 games to go after they beat the Pats at home. And I said, is Tannehill really bad? Is he actually bad? Because I know he didn't grade well in that year, but you look at his career and you saw a steady climb above 7 yards per pass attempt with coaches that flat out sucked in many cases. He's the only quarterback that Adam Gase has ever taken to the playoffs. as a head coach. He had 2 knee injuries that were unfortunate, and we saw exactly what happened to that Dolphins offense when a combination of Super Bowl winning Matt Moore, Brock Osweiler, and Jay Cutler all tried the reins there. Yes, last season was a blip for Tannehill, but I don't think it accompanies a drop off to the quarterback that should be underdogs to Drew Lock in week 1.
I'm with you. Here's what I'll say about that as well. You talked about the total, 41. The Denver Broncos lost Chris Harris Jr., one of the best 3 cornerbacks in PFF grade over the last 10 years. They replaced him with anybody? A couple of rookies.
Isaac Yiadom, is he still on the team?
No, Isaac Yiadom's no longer there. They traded him for a 7th. Michael Ojemudia, 3rd-round pick, I believe, was their pick. The Tennessee Titans should shred the living daylights out of the secondary.
Yeah, well, and on offense, obviously the offensive line might struggle a little bit with Conklin leaving, having to face against Von Miller. Yeah. But like, this isn't the game where Ryan Tannehill is going to be found out, right? The game where he's going to be found out is when they're not ahead and they can't run play action and he's got to drop back out of the gun every time.
Right.
Like this game, they should be in a pretty decent game script. Don't you think, Lee?
Yeah, I imagine all 3 of us have some decent money in Tennessee Titans futures. And this just strikes me as a game where, if like, to me, the worst case for Tennessee in this game is that it's just a very low scoring game and they have trouble getting out, the Denver defense holds or something. But, I have a lot. It just seems like the market is way off on this and that there's no reason at all that Denver should have been a favorite. I bet it by taking the Denver money line as well. That's that, because when you're only getting, I think it's similar to what we mentioned earlier, when it's, only 1.5 or 2 or something like that, like you'd probably rather just take the money line value. I think that's the right side of this. Tannehill is good. While he had a very lucky year last year, he was very well graded from a clean pocket, which, as you guys have shown is more stable than other things. I just don't see why Denver. I think that the market is just wrong here. If I had to make a case for Denver, I would say the only thing that is in their favor is the home field advantage of the elevation, which should not go away because of COVID. In fact, if I were Mike Vrabel, I would probably get the team on a plane and just go to Denver right now.
I'd already be in Denver.
Go what?
I'd already be in Denver.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's week 1, so take advantage of that and get there early. But obviously they're not there now, and I don't know when they're gonna fly there. But that's what would make sense to me. But I just don't see the value is maybe because it's a late start that affects Tennessee or something. But it just doesn't make sense to me that
there's
Tennessee
a ton of.
You make a great point about the home field. The thing that Denver does in September, which is the elevation plus heat, which is really the double whammy. The night game, I think, mitigates some of that.
That's not a bad point at all. I was also going to mention, the continuity on the side of the Titans. You mentioned Conklin not being there, but the passing game relatively intact. And then you look at the Broncos, new coordinator. I know the schemes are relatively similar, but also a lot of hope that new rookie wide receivers contribute right from the get-go. So be interesting to see. Okay, next slate of games. We'll move through these a little more quickly before we get to the Skyline Chili slate, which, as Skyline Chili does, moves through the system very quickly.
Jeez.
The first May game, the Miami Dolphins with Ryan Fitzpatrick against the New England Patriots in New England. New England favored by 6. Leland. I don't actually know if that's your full name, but
no, it's actually just Lee. But
okay.
I'll roll with the punches.
I'm from Northern California, right by Stanford, so I'm used to saying Leland.
Leland, yeah. No, I like the Dolphins. I think we have too much uncertainty about what New England's going to be. People are pretty confident, it seems, in New England, and I think we need to see it before we believe it. Ryan Fitzpatrick obviously had a pretty good year, and while Miami, did sort of outperform from a Pythagorean win perspective how they should have done. I think they have there's a very good chance that they have the better quarterback in this game.
Yes.
And I want to see it with the new Patriots before I buy into it. The numbers just too high for me, especially again with the mispriced home field advantage.
I'm with you. I think, man, the New England is such the variance team this year, right? Like the for a team whose set of outcomes has never been more narrow, probably other than the 80s 49ers, right? Like there's never been a team in the league where you could just say, hey, it's 11 or 12 wins. And
right.
I think this team, the probability that they win between 6 and 10 games is probably smaller than any other team in the league, right? And the chance that they win very few is pretty high. And the chance they win a decent amount is pretty high. It starts with this game, though, where I don't know anything. And if I don't know, if I'm struggling, I go right to where you said, Lee. I think that Fitzpatrick might be the better quarterback. So take the points.
You can believe that Cam Newton will ultimately be awesome and also think that he's not the best quarterback in this game. And I think that's very possible. That's a rational thought.
Who is he going to throw to?
Julian Edelman. That's the only guy. That's literally the only guy.
Yeah.
I don't need to list any more because it's Julian Edelman
and then, James White, maybe.
Okay, if we're counting running backs.
Yeah.
We're giving them life in this one. But this is one where I don't really want to wait to see it. Yeah. I kind of want to bet on the team that I think actually is decent from an offensive perspective. The Dolphins picked up Byron Jones. They went from having a real sieve, right, on the defensive backfield to having some guys that can cover.
Last season, Xavier Howard barely played. They had the worst secondary. They had a below replacement level secondary collectively. And that you go from that to Xavier Howard, Noah Igbenogany, as well as Byron Jones. Safeties that weren't terrible. And then your linebackers include Van Noy, Landon Roberts. I think you're going to be okay. And plus the Patriots,
they have cluster opt-outs.
Yeah. Well, and their secondary is not necessarily going to be the best thing in the world. You lost Harmon, you lost Chung. Gesicki might have a good game when the Patriots can't cover tight ends. It's like
Hightower's not playing. Yeah. All right, next game. Cleveland at Baltimore. The Baltimore Ravens are favored by 8.5 points. 48.5 is the total. I'll start this one off. This is one of the ones that I'm most excited about, despite the fact that Stefanski is a new coach. The Cleveland Browns getting 8.5 points, despite how great the Baltimore Ravens are, is a bet that I like. My belief is that Freddie Kitchens was an absolutely atrocious leader of men and coacher of football, and that just putting a mannequin in there would have improved them. So 8.5 is just too many for me. I've silenced you both with that.
I like the Cleveland side a lot. I think that getting 8.5 points is a pretty significant number. I expect some regression on Baltimore, especially being a defensive team, and that tends to have that higher. Also, while the Ravens built a really impressive offense that's well suited to Lamar Jackson's talents, that was a brand new thing that was in football last year, effectively. And when you're managing games week to week, I think it's harder for the defensive coordinators of teams to plan around that. But now that we've had an off season, even when in COVID times, you can still look at film, you can still plan things out. I think that's more likely to get sort of exposed a little bit as people design to defend it compared to what people are expecting.
The Browns are a team full of people that I respect for the first time in the franchise's second history.
Our guy Kwesi.
Well, you have Kevin Stefanski, who from everybody I've talked to is one of the nicest people, one of the most steadfast people, somebody who players for the Minnesota Vikings were genuinely disappointed when he left. Obviously, you have Andrew Berry, They seem to want to be a part of that sign and trade deal. They are not fucking around. They lose Grant Delpit, so they trade for Ronnie Harrison. That's clearly wanting to win. They're pairing Myles Garrett's contract with Baker Mayfield, so they got the two valuable positions. One is cheap, one is expensive. They do a lot of smart things, and this team is built a lot like the offense that, while not very good in my opinion, was decent last year in Minnesota. You have two wide receivers, you have two athletic tight ends, and you have two pretty good running backs. And an offensive line that's drastically improved now that they got two tackles that are well regarded. I think, I'm not saying the Browns win this game, although they did last year in this exact same betting line, in Baltimore. But I think that they challenge in this game. I think this game's a close game.
This game feels like an absolute dogfight to me. The Browns were humiliated last year. Humiliated.
Yeah.
The Ravens, I mean, the playoff game was humiliating, but they were the talk of the town. Everyone loves the Ravens. This is going to be a dogfight.
The Ravens have nothing to prove this year for the first time
until they get to the playoffs.
Yeah.
They had everything to prove during the regular season last year.
Yeah.
And this year, the regular season doesn't matter. It's about the playoffs for them. Next up, the Seattle Seahawks are going to I don't know if they're yours yet, Lee, but as a part of the PFF family.
The covenant?
Yeah.
I have to adopt them now? All right.
Yes. It may or may not require an Atlanta Falcons tattoo somewhere on your body. We are steadfast in our belief that at some point, Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and our boy Dan Quinn will rise again. The Falcons are 2-point underdogs at home to the eventual NFC Super Bowl representative Seattle Seahawks. Lee, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is a tricky one, especially because often the market will move. But I've seen maybe 1.5s, but it's been like -1 since launch, basically constantly, which is kind of surprising. The modeling that I do likes the Seattle side more, and obviously the home field advantage again. Miss Price likes Seattle. I do think it may be overweighting the quarterback a bit because obviously Russell Wilson is just absurd. So I do think I kind of like the Seattle position if forced to take a side on this, but to me, I don't want to disrespect the PFF Falcon now. But I think this is actually a fairly close game. It's not one that I'm looking to bet.
I have a big announcement.
Huge. You're not touching this game with a 40-foot pole.
I am not picking this game. I will not bet on this game. There is no way I will bet on this game.
This is another game that I'm really excited to watch.
I can't wait to watch it. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to get some information from it. And that's that. Eric.
The Falcons were 6-2 down the stretch last year, including winning.
Our Falcons.
Beating your Niners.
Oh, I know.
At Candlestick.
They know how to get me. Throw me out and reel me back in.
They're just trying to keep Dan Quinn in his job.
Yeah.
They love Dan Quinn. Though I have heard nothing but amazing things about Dan Quinn. We had Mike Tirico on this podcast a few months ago, and we asked him what coaches he thinks will adapt really well to the pandemic, have their teams ready to go, and you kind of want to bet on them coming out of this thing in a good place. He mentioned the guys you would expect, and then Dan Quinn, and waxed poetic about how much respect he has for him, how much his players love him. Anyways.
The thing about the Falcons is there's a couple ways to look at it.
The one thing. Okay.
They've been improving from a basic, how would I call it? Basic strategy, right? They go for it more on fourth downs. They are running less on early downs. A lot of the things that have driven us crazy about them have gone away. They're still trying to come back from Shanahan being so good and the expectations that were elicited by that. And on defense, at some point, they have to not have everybody get injured. Like that's really been the big deal, right? Is on defense, they've been so thin that it just hasn't been able to work for them in large part because, Keanu Neal gets hurt and then Ricardo Allen gets hurt and DeMonte KZ has to play 3 different positions. Desmond Trufant gets hurt. Like Deion Jones misses a half a season. Now, I'm not saying that like, oh, they've been injured for the past 3 years, now they have to be healthy. That's not the case. But I'm saying, have we mispriced Atlanta in our minds because of the frustration that has been the case due to what we studied this offseason, which is the weak ties thing?
I don't know.
Weak ties have buried them.
I don't know what frustration you're talking about. They haven't caused me any frustration. Even when they came out against Minnesota last year and half the team forgot to show up to the game, I wasn't even frustrated then. Never been frustrated once by the Falcons. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on. There was another game in here in this slate, but they were demoted to the Skyline Chili slate.
Nice. For the sake of time?
No, actually, because it's the Chicago Bears. And I can't, in good faith, put Mitchell Trubisky in any other slate. So Bears, Lions. Lions are 3-point favorites at home. Everyone and their mother, Lee, everyone has hopped on the Detroit Lions bandwagon. It's getting crowded there. I'm still there, but I'm thinking about selling my now very coveted plot of land right at the front of the Detroit Lions bandwagon. And in this game, I struggle because it feels like one where I can't imagine Mitch Trubisky comes out and does anything, but the Bears do have good players elsewhere. And so I'm a little torn. I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I liked this game. This game opened around a pick'em, and I don't think I got it quite at a pick'em. I think I got it at like Detroit -1. But at -3, I just I don't like it as much. I think that I'd rather stay away. Like, I think it's really easy to make fun of the quarterbacking situation in Chicago. So I certainly do it plenty on Twitter.
We're maxed out on time for that, so we can't do that anymore in this podcast.
Gotcha. But the Bears do have a good defense, and I think that this game has a good chance to be close. And I really don't want to be sitting there holding Lions -3 and have it come down to a field goal. I think this is probably too expensive now.
Or Adrian Peterson having to run the game out. By the way, Adrian Peterson choosing to sign with a contender instead of trying to chase Emmitt Smith is very admirable for Peterson.
If you can say anything about Adrian Peterson, it's that he's admirable.
I have a lot of. This is probably my most bet game.
But what do you have it at?
1.5, and then like money line -120 or something like that.
Yeah.
Almost to the point where I come back on +3 just because. Yeah,
I'm a little nervous. I don't want to suffer any sort of consternation because of Mitch Trubisky. It just wouldn't be cool. Next game, the Los Angeles Chargers are coming here, visiting us in Cincinnati.
Doors open.
Playing the Bengals and Joe Burrow. Bengals are 3-point underdogs to the Tyrod Taylor. They named him officially?
Mm-hmm.
They have, okay. The Tyrod Taylor Chargers. Eric.
I mean, it's Bengals or nothing at this point.
Are you actually betting the Bengals? Are you excited about it?
I mean, I'm holding my nose. I'm excited to watch Burrow play, but there's no way I'm laying points with the Chargers in this situation.
I just admonished people for wanting to be right about the Bucs right from the get-go, but I'm willing to plant my flag with Joe Burrow and be right from the get-go with him. And I am getting the better quarterback at home getting points.
Drop off in home field advantage, by the way, with fans. Not that big for Bengals fans.
No, it's not. This is the same number of fans that were at every Bengals game last year. Yeah. So it's not going to be a big deal for them. Lee, your thoughts?
Same for the Chargers, though, too.
Right.
Yeah.
The body of water that they're playing next to is a little bit different, though. The stench off the Ohio is a little stronger. Yeah.
Feels a little different.
Yeah. It's different.
No, I just can't imagine laying points with the Chargers here. I do have money on the Bengals +3, but I think that's certainly considerably more likely to be the right side. I just laying points with a team that I think the market is higher, especially when I was looking at one of the articles I wrote earlier with like division place bets. Obviously AFC West, Kansas City, everyone clearly acknowledges the number one team, but when you look at like sort of second, third, fourth, how it's shaped up, right? It seemed like the market have mostly had the Chargers as sort of the most likely to be second place team. That doesn't really make sense to me with where they have at quarterback, even though they've got some other good pieces. I think the Bengals conversion, so they're probably a bit overrated. Conversely, when you look at the Bengals, I think they're probably a bit underrated. They're obviously in a really tough division, but people are not high, it seems, on Joe Burrow just coming out of the gate and doing good things, and I think there's a better chance of that than the market is giving it credit for.
No Derwin James should not be dismissed.
I'm going to bet we'll see. We have a new props tool. If there is a shade of value on the Tyler Boyd over on Sunday, I'm going in on
You
it.
have such a type at receiver. It's so obvious. I could have picked Tyler Boyd as being one of your guys from miles away. The Indianapolis Colts are going to Jacksonville to play Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew is getting 8 points at home against Jacksonville. Am I crazy to think it is just disrespectful beyond belief to be giving Gardner Minshew 8 points?
Yeah.
I am crazy.
I think this is a game where if you're skeptical on the Colts, you do it in other ways.
You bet the Titans.
Yeah, you do it in other ways, because I think the Colts are going to try to prove to everybody that like this is a classic. This is Baltimore, and I think Ian said this on Twitter. This is Baltimore versus the Dolphins. Travel down there, everybody's like, "Oh, is this line a little short? Is this line a little, And then they just absolutely
beat the brakes,
smash them. Yeah.
Does Gardner Minshew take you as a guy that just gets the brakes beaten off him?
I mean, sometimes we saw the London game was like 30-0.
That's true. All right, you're doing a good job, Lee. You want to hammer that home?
Yeah, no. This game is actually not it's actually not a game that I want to bet either way. The 7.5 is mostly where the number seems to be out in the market, and I don't really want to be laying 7.5 with sort of a team that kind of, as Eric alluded to, probably a little bit down on the Colts relative to the market. The market seems to have them as the favorite in the AFC South. But again, like the Jaguars are just not. They're not where I want to put my money. And again, the home field advantage doesn't favor them either. So even with the hook, this is just it's not something I can get excited about betting. So I'm just going to stay away.
Ye of little faith. It's all right. I'll just let it be known. Make sure we get this on wax. Gardner Minshew was supported by one person here.
It was supported by one person.
That's
right.
It was me.
Mustache doesn't require a whole lot of extra support.
It's true. All right. The New York Jets are going to Buffalo. Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills are 6.5 point favorites. The total is at 40. Mr. Eager. Dr. Eager.
I'm going Jets or nothing.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Is this a Josh Allen fade?
This is very much a Josh Allen fade, yeah.
The
better quarterback is getting a full, almost a whole touchdown.
Okay. Counterpoint. Both quarterbacks suck. The difference is that the Jets have legitimately one of the worst supporting casts ever created in humanity.
Yeah.
Whereas the Bills have both Sean McDermott, which is like a huge plus relative to Adam Gase, and then playmakers everywhere else. And you just mentioned the Ravens from a year ago. The Bills are coming out looking for blood.
Yeah.
That's my counterpoint.
It could happen. I mean, here's the thing, though. The Jets are pretty good defensively, even without Jamal Adams, I'd say. And among those two quarterbacks, I think Josh Allen's upside is overrated, and I think his downside is underrated. I think we get a more confined set of outcomes in Darnold.
Okay. Lee?
Yeah, like obviously neither of these quarterbacks are good. The Bills was just mentioned. The Bills have the stronger defense, but when you look at this game, the total for this game is 40, which is the lowest total on the board of the Week 1 games. And that's strongly, sort of the market sort of confirming my priors of this is likely to be a very, low scoring, a lot of punt, a lot of field goal style game. And I just don't, even though I obviously think Buffalo is the better team, especially with the home field advantage mispriced again, 6.5 is just, I just think that's too much given I don't think the talent disparity between these teams.
So you're betting
6.5.
You're betting the Jets? Yeah. Off. Yeah, I see a strong case for that. I mean, I've always been a quarterback first person. I'm not going to stop now. But man, there is stinker potential for the Jets. Like if this is 20-0, I'm not surprised. I will not be surprised.
Yeah. I think the Bills have played over their skis on defense the last few years too.
Okay. That's fair.
They're not exactly a front seven that could take advantage of the Jets, who I think's offensive line is still bad.
Yeah, that's fair. The Las Vegas Raiders going to Carolina. Carolina, a 3-point underdog with Matt Rule at home. Eric, I remember you talking about how excited you were to bet the Raiders. Are you still?
Not at 3.
Yeah.
So it's come up to 3 here. I think it's probably.
What about Teddy? What about your boy?
Well, as Warren Sharp once said, Teddy against the spread has been better than like Tom Brady. So maybe
Lee, has that suckered you in as well?
Markets never adjust, so it makes sense to me.
Do you have any appetite for either side of this game?
I'd rather have the Vegas side for sure. I think that the continuity argument has been talked a lot about and is probably a bit sort of a overstated. But I think if there's any team that there's an exception to that for, it's Carolina, who it's just everything is different about this team. The quarterback is different. The coaching is different. Just everything is different. And so if there's a team that, is going through that and is sort of suffering through it, I think it's probably the Panthers. And, but the value is definitely, this opened around a pick 'em, and getting it in low was the time to get in. I'm certainly not going to put any more money on it now that the price has shifted away from where I want to be. Last
game, the Philadelphia Eagles at the Washington Football Team. This is the first time I haven't messed up their name in a podcast, so I feel really good about myself. Looks like it's 6.5. I have been on the Washington Football Team and the rejuvenation of that team with Ron Rivera, Dwayne Haskins, and Terry McLaurin. What do you guys think?
And Alex Smith.
Yeah, and Alex Smith. Is this where it starts?
They were up 17-0 against the Eagles on the road last year in week 1 with Case Keenum. To me, this is less about the breadsticks and more about the Eagles. Like offensive line issues, always have secondary issues. I don't care what the names are. Run the ball too much on early downs. There's just a lot of things to like about the Eagles, but I always struggle laying points with them.
Yep. I'm with you there. Lee?
Yeah, this is not, I think if you're going to take the game for largely the reasons you guys outlined, the Washington's probably the right side. It's tough because of, there's a lot there that we just don't know with what these teams look like. I think that we like, I think Eric's written about it quite a bit, like liking Haskins more than sort of the market seems to. And, I buy into that. The Eagles, there's injuries. There's just so much unknowns in this game that it's just a stay away from me. It's something to learn to see, I think, how well both of these teams are doing and hope that there's value in it later. But I don't love this game, but if I'm going to take a side, it's Washington.
It's the right side. All right. We've made it through the week 1 slate. I'm going to give you guys each a chance, your favorite side of the entire first week. Eric, why don't you go first? Putting you on the spot here.
Yeah. If I can get the 8.5, I'm going to take the Cleveland Browns.
Football Browns. I like it. Lee?
I think that the side that I'm most excited about is probably the Tennessee Titans.
Very nice. Both of those up there on my list. But I will diverge just to give a little bit of flavor here. And I'll go with my Arizona Cardinals against my San Francisco 49ers, getting 7.
You're a bigger man than me because Houston was on the list, although the number's bad.
Yeah, see, I was going to go Houston until it dropped. So if it gets back to 10, take Houston.
Are you an emotional hedge better, George?
No, of course
No?
not. No.
Okay.
No. Don't worry.
Yeah. He you didn't have that much on them in the Super Bowl, but it was
I
didn't have anything on the Chiefs, let's put it that way.
I did. I bet the Chiefs a ton.
Oh.
I bet as soon as the number came out, I hammered the Chiefs because I thought it was ridiculous.
The one that you lost that was just a horrible, like bad beat Hall of Fame was the teaser, the +8 under 60.
Was an absolute
just a nightmare. 60 was a slam dunk.
We really you just have to get it in.
No,
there.
you have to get it out though.
That's
you
true.
have to exercise
Therapeutic. All right. Lee, we can follow you on Twitter. It's at Lee Sharpe NFL, right? I didn't mess that up.
Correct.
Right? And you will be hosting, co-hosting part of the new PFF Daily Betting Podcast. I'm really excited for that. Your content has been awesome, man. So welcome to the team, and thanks for hanging out with us, buddy.
Awesome. It's really exciting to be here. Ever since, I've started, especially seeking down this path, I've really always admired what Pro Football Focus has done and the approach things. And this podcast has always been a must listen to me, even back in the Sampo Ranta days. So
appreciate you.
It's good
what we need to do
to feel honored to be on it. And I'm excited to be working with you guys and help produce good content.
Lee, you're one of the best, and we're really happy to have you as well. What we need to do,
a little Sampo Ranta.
We need to have a Sampo Ranta something in the studio here.
Yeah. Treasonous Tangerine needs to make a
treasonous. What was
one last comeback?
Treasonous Tangerine. I forgot.
just get a bottle of a fake bottle of Sampo Ranta. Just put it right in the middle of the table.
Yeah.
Treasonous Tangerine seems so quaint now.
I know. That's how we'll go out. Thank you, Lee. Lee is awesome. Definitely go check him out on Twitter if you don't already. Read his stuff. I've learned a lot just from reading the pieces that he's done already for PFF. And then obviously he's going to be on the Daily Betting Podcast, which should be awesome. It's now time. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So a couple of weekends ago, I am traveling back to Washington, D.C. to visit my girlfriend. And this flight is usually about an hour. It's a very short flight. Because of the pandemic, there are no nonstop flights. I'm stopping in Charlotte, North Carolina on my way. So I've got 2 flights to kind of worry about, but I get lucky. And I have some status on American, so I get upgraded. So
good for you.
Exactly. But this is important because I usually overreact to anything negative that happens, particularly
at airports.
Yes. So I'm feeling great about myself because I've got a first class seat. No one's going to bother me. I'm going to get to Charlotte and then I'm going to get to DC unscathed. No one's going to come close to giving me the coronavirus. So it all starts poorly. There's a car accident on the freeway, which means I'm risking being late. Because You're
already in an Uber, which is
yes. But I cut it close every time. And so I am sprinting down the Cincy corridor to get to my flight. I make it, but I've gotten a nice little workout in. I'm sweating a little bit. So I'm just so relieved to sit down in this first class seat right away from any riffraff that could potentially disturb me. Okay. So we take off. And the guy next to me starts to eat. And of course, he has to take his mask off to do so. And I'm like, okay, listen, buddy, this is a 40-minute flight. Do you think that maybe you could have saved your trail mix 40 minutes? Like, would you have survived not eating on this 40-minute flight? But I'm already sweating. No need to get worked up. Let me chill. I'm sure he'll be done soon. So it turns out that he's eating Pringles, and not the small Pringles, the tube of Pringles that you could fit a human body in, one of those. He's eating that tube of Pringles. So I pull out my laptop, I've got on my lap, I'm kind of angled away from him, so that I don't have to get, I'm not in breath shot. All of a sudden, Eric, in front of my computer screen appears the tube of Pringles.
He set it on your...
This motherfucker offered me some of his Pringles. He held the tube of Pringles in front of me, wondering if I would like to stick my hand into the tube of Pringles, grab one, and then put it into my mouth. I almost froze. I didn't know what to
Freezing's
do.
probably the right thing to do.
I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want him to then say something back to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I handled this well. I just shook my head and waited for it to disappear. And eventually it did.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. I didn't swear.
Look, I don't require that much of people, but it didn't take me that long. So here's the thing. I sometimes eat around you.
Yeah.
I don't waste it on bad stuff like that though.
Well, and you don't stick your hand in your bowl of salted peanuts, rub them around a little bit, and then go, "Hey, buddy."
Can we talk for a second about if I die, I die thing? Because I feel like this is it's a direct consequence
nice transition.
of this. No, because there are people who are like, look, I wear a mask that they make me. And then you can tell immediately by their actions that they don't really care, which is like
which is this?
Yeah, and you're like, wow, you're just kind of going along to get along. Like you don't actually care if like you breathe in this like deadly virus to me. Is that worse than just being one of these people that gets on the internet like throwing things at Walmart employees?
Ooh, is it worse?
Is it worse? 'Cause I feel like it's worse.
I mean, you are a huge fraud. Like, at least you're being true to yourself if you're on the internet casting spells on people, you know?
But
here's the thing.
It lulls you into a false sense of security. That's my issue. Like,
I felt safe for 10 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
And then all of a sudden I was worried I would and it's not about, here's the thing. I don't want to get too into this, but here's my thought on it. Look, am I worried about dying? No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I am worried about being contagious and spreading this to you, to Tyler, to the people, to Chris Collinsworth, who works here, who probably, because he's in good shape, won't die either. But guess what? It's not about that.
Right.
It's about not being a fucking idiot.
Right.
So
like that's always my issue with, and that's why it actually mattered what he said, because it gives because it's the same thing. If Alex Jones sits next to me on the airplane, I'm gonna be like, sir, I'm gonna get another seat. But if somebody else is like playing the game kind of half-assed, like that's worse, in my opinion, than like.
It's just not hard to not be stupid
and to care about people, like just
care a little bit, because if we do, here's the beautiful thing. If we do, and if NFL players do, we're going to get to watch NFL football.
And I want to go to Tampa. I want to go to Tampa.
So do I. So enjoy week one. We'll be back with you. We're going to record Wednesday night, so we'll have it Thursday morning. We'll get some props in there. We'll prep you for Thursday night. We'll talk a little bit more about week one. Love you guys.
It's here.
See you guys.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.